Hello everyone and welcome back to Inspiration. My name is Ivor and I'm back. This time we're gonna take a look at this little thing here I actually finished making just a moment ago. This is a replica of the Lokomo sword from the Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, which actually was the first Zelda game I ever played, and I loved the design of this sword from the first time I saw it. And a month ago, maybe, I realized I can do this if I want, and then I made a replica just because I felt for it. I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail about how this was made, but first I'm gonna give you a little better view of how it looks. Okay? So, now when I've showed you a bit more how it looks, I'm gonna show you some pictures and go into more detail about how I made it, because I think that's probably more interesting than just hearing me babble on about how it turned out and how I made it and so on. So let's start with the blade. So now for the blade. I actually don't have any photos from when I made the blade, so I will just show you this photo instead. But don't worry, I have for the other pieces, I just hadn't thought about it to take pictures of the project when I was making it, when I made the blade. So, what I did first was that I drew the shape of the blade on a piece of wood, and then I just sawed it out with a bandsaw. Then I simply planed out the edges on it to make the sword's edges with the plane, simply. And that is pretty much how I made the edges and so on. So it's a pretty simple but kind of long process. Now those triangles that are covering the blade, I made those by first drawing them very hard into the wood, and then I put two pieces of aluminum tape on both sides of the blade. No, one for each side, that's how you say it. And then I just nailed the aluminum tape deep down into the wood, so that I would see the contours of the drawings of the triangles, and then I simply cut out the triangles by cutting in those lines, and then I removed the spare the spare aluminum tape that I shouldn't have on the sword. And then I simply put another layer of aluminum tape on top of this, and well, that gave me those triangles over it. Now when I had the blade in right shape and right color and so on, I just drilled up a hole down in the top, and then put in something that is, I don't actually know what this is called in English, but in Swedish it's called a rampamuff, and it has like those, it's made so that you can screw it up into a wood piece of wood or something, and then you can screw like a piece of steel up inside of it, so it's pretty much a screw with a hole in it. And this was because I wanted to be able to put a piece of steel up inside it, and through that make a base to build the rest of the sword on. That is all for the blade. Now, the middle part, I started with doing the exact same as I did with the blade. I drew a sketch of how I wanted it to look, the outer shape of it, on a piece of wood, and then I just sawed it out with a bandsaw again. So exactly the same start there. Then I drew the shape of those cutouts on it and took a chisel to just cut a bit in those lines to make it easier to cut down into them and make them into holes later. Then I actually took the same chisel and made a cutout on the top of it all to stuck the sword in to make it right on everywhere that it had to. Well, the blade had to sit inside of the middle part to a certain length, and that is why I did that. Then I actually just took the same chisel and started to cutting out the holes and cut downs in it. But this obviously did not get very smooth, so I later used a special kind of plane to just smooth the surfaces down in the holes, or the cutouts, out a bit. Then I took a really long drill, I think, or something, and however I drilled a hole in it so that this piece of steel that sits in the blade should be able to come through and later go through the handle and so on. So that's pretty much how I made the shape and so on of it. When that part was finished, I painted it with something that's called lacknafta in Swedish, and I couldn't find what that's called in English. However, I did this because I didn't want the wood to later, when I painted it, to suck up all the paint. So that was to prevent that from happening. And when I had painted the middle part in 2 layers of lacknafta, I made those triangular 3-dimensional parts just with a sander and bandsaw. I cut the shape out and then I sanded them to be those triangle. And I glued them on and painted them with lacknafta as well. No, wait. With shellac, I mean. Sorry. Wrong word. And that's pretty much it for the middle part for now. The handle is simply just a round piece of wood that we drilled through, and then I just cut out the shape a little bit with a knife. So not really more advanced than that, and also I strapped leather around it later also, so that's pretty much it for the handle. The leather is not even glued on, it's just strapped, and still it sits there very fine. The sword button is actually not so advanced either. I actually just glued 2 pieces of wood together to get the thickness of it, and then I just sawed the shape out with a bandsaw. I think that was pretty much all I did, apart from that top, the golden piece, the rounder part is I made that with a knife, so I cut that out simply. Then we drilled a hole in it and stuck another rampamuff in there so that it would be so that we would be able to screw the sword together later. That's all for the sword button, I think. The paint job on it is pretty simple. I was going for a pretty cartoonish look on that part, so I haven't done any weathering on it. I just pretty much took the sword apart, each piece apart, and then painted them for hands separately. It's not really anything more advanced than that. The leather at the handle I just strapped around itself, and then strapped around the handle all the way down to the sword button, and then I put the sword button over the leather, and through doing that I just stopped it from wrapping up. And that actually makes it for how I did the sword itself. That makes it for this video. If you want to see more projects, check back in my channel for other projects I have made previously. If you want to build your own sword, I wish you good luck. And if nothing else, I hope to see you in the next video I make. Goodbye.